And it is going to be a good year.
So the whole purpose of this channel is to make life-changing returns by being an early-stage investor in revolutionary technology. We've seen it done before, so it's definitely going to happen again. And so you may know by now which assets are my absolute favorite, which I think are almost guaranteed to provide life-changing returns. But it doesn't mean we don't stay on top of every single other potentially life-changing asset on the planet when the fundamentals warrant. So today we're going to talk about Hedera hashgraph, dive into some recent updates, and figure out whether or not this asset can provide massive life-changing returns. So let's start with an update from one of the founders of Hedera hashgraph and how he's viewing this next year.
It is a good time. I think that we have all sorts of opportunities this year, and it is going to be a good year. I am very excited about what we're going to see this year.
One of the key founders of Hedera, Leemon Baird, is incredibly excited for what comes next this year. So let's dive into some fundamentals and some of the biggest headlines related to this asset that literally just came out on March 3, 2025. Here's a headline. Swift adopts Hedera tech across 3 continents. At HederaCon, Swift made a groundbreaking announcement. How big is Swift? Swift, the backbone of international banking, processes an astonishing $150 trillion annually, over $400 billion per day, surpassing the combined GDP of most countries. Okay, so Swift is absolutely massive. So let's dive into what this person, a director at Swift, said at HederaCon.
My name is Alyssa DiCaprio. I work for Swift as head of industry engagement. And before that, I was chief economist at R3. So my remit at Swift is largely to work with central banks and to work with payment market infrastructures to increase the speed of payments, increase the transparency of payments, as well as building out digital public infrastructure. What we're seeing with stablecoins is this explosion of new types of financial instruments, which is fantastic, but it also increases complexity enormously. Yeah. And so how do you simplify that? So you make sure that there's still a stable flow, right? And you make sure that everybody can access this, because right now that is definitely not the case, right? You certainly have different sectors that are using it heavily and some sectors that are not using it at all, but that should be using it. So I think in terms of, we've focused a lot on financial fragmentation and how to reduce that. And it's not just a story about one company doing it. It has to be a collaborative effort. One of the things that we're doing is working very heavily on digital public infrastructure. And this is interesting because this is the idea that you have institutions and you have governments which traditionally have not built payment rails, right? Payment rails are often built by the private sector and sort of backed up by the public sector. And now we see the public sector saying, oh, there's all these things going on. We actually have to be involved in this. And you see this movement of national payment systems, of different regulations about AI and DLT and stablecoins.
So she's talking about how massive blockchain is, how huge public organizations are diving in and using this technology. But this is where it gets kind of exciting for Hedera hashgraph.
We've done a lot of POCs, kind of live trials, to understand where the different pressure points are and where the frictions are and how they can be addressed.
Yeah. So, and 2025, you've got a lot of live trials coming up, because we were talking to your team last week, and some amazing stuff coming up.
So there she is talking about how the Swift network, as enormous as it is, has been conducting live trials of blockchain technology. So it's really important to know which crypto assets they're going to use. We know they've been using Chainlink, but then we have this guy also on the panel saying, we were talking to you last week about doing trials with Swift on top of these blockchains. So who is that guy?
So delighted to be here. I'm Rob Allen. I'm the Hedera Governing Council representative for Australian Payments Plus.
So he's the Hedera Governing Council representative of Australian Payments Plus. How massive is Australian Payments Plus? According to recent information, Australian Payments Plus processed around 5.7 billion transactions in 2024 with over 150 partner institutions and approximately 532 employees. So they said on the Hedera hashgraph Governing Council, he's admitting on stage that he's working with Swift to, in theory, run live trials on Hedera hashgraph. So that points to just a massive potential partnership for Hedera hashgraph, for Swift to potentially use it to process trillions of dollars of value in transactions every single year. Now, Swift is using a whole bunch of different blockchains. The future is multi-chain. Swift wants to connect with Chainlink to integrate with every single blockchain on the planet. We know Chainlink has an interoperable blockchain platform. And so it's just potentially groundbreaking to realize that Swift and this enormous Australian payments company are potentially working together on top of Hedera hashgraph. And clearly, she's at the HederaCon. So if Hedera hashgraph is one of the preferred blockchains of choice that is going to be connecting into the Swift network powered by Chainlink, potentially very, very massive for Hedera, and speaks to the quality of Hedera. Now, Hedera adopts the Chainlink data standard to accelerate DeFi and tokenize real-world asset adoption, right? So this speaks to how Hedera is part of the Chainlink family, and therefore it's connected to the Swift network, because if you're connected to Chainlink, you're connected to Swift. So clearly it's a high-quality asset. We have massive global organizations talking at a Hedera conference about running live trials on Hedera. We don't know the details of it, but what we do know is Swift and this massive Australian company, which sits on the Hedera Hashgraph Governing Council, are talking about running live trials, right? So we're just getting started. We're building the future internet. It's all happening before our very eyes. Massive organizations building on top of these assets. It speaks to the quality of Hedera that these conversations are even taking place. So just an update, right? We have to stay on top of what's going on with these revolutionary assets because we want those life-changing returns. Very good sign for Hedera. Going to have to stay on top of the space and assets like Hedera and all new developments so we know exactly what to invest in.